Welcome to Techno Geeks Corner. Now I know it's been a year since I have actually done a Techno Geeks video, but let's just put it this way, I've been thinking about possibly coming back and ways that I could, and with all of you requesting, at least recently, a lot of people are requesting, that I do a Joycon repair video. Because I had to actually repair one on stream on my Twitch channel, which, by the way, you guys can look on the link below. Now, one of the biggest issues with the Switch is the factor of these guys, the Joy-Cons. Now, over time what happens is the Joy-Con itself will actually start to shred inside, and this causes a lot of issues. So what I'm going to do for you today is actually teach you how you could fix it yourself, relatively cheaply too. Stay tuned. Alright, so first things we need to do is we need to grab 2 screwdrivers. Note, I will link the page on Amazon where I actually bought my professional tool set. First, you need a Y-bit screwdriver, which looks kind of like this. If the camera will actually zoom into that. You probably can't see it, but it is a Y screwdriver on the outside. And you happen to have 4 screws. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we do remove those guys. So once you actually get those 4 screws out, you are going to have to pry a little bit. I recommend taking a bit on the corner, and then kind of running your fingernail down around the side to actually pop that off. So kind of like that. And then you can kind of lift this off, but be very careful, because you don't want to break this. Over here, we have our battery connector. Now the biggest thing about this is you don't want to pull up. You don't want to pull away. You want to pull straight up. Because if you pull away, then you're actually going to break the cable, which I have done once myself. But you just want to pull straight up. This disconnects your battery. So therefore, there's no power going through this Joy-Con. So next thing, we have 3 screws to remove. First off, we do need to remove that battery. So just grab a little pry bar. You have three screws that actually hold the thing together. We have one up here, one up here, one up here. Now keep in mind the bit is a little bit different. It's not the tri-wing, it's actually just a standard Phillips. Now the kit that I'm linking to you actually has both of those. Now keep these screws separate, because these are what actually hold the battery pack properly in your Switch Joy-Cons. Don't lose these screws, because they're pretty important. So remove that. Careful not to disconnect this wire, as this controls your ZR button. Now lastly, for removing the actual control stick, so we have a couple things that we do need to remove. First off, we do have a screw hidden underneath this ribbon cable, and then another screw over here. So remove those 2, and then we got another ribbon cable over here, which you just lift up with something sharp, let's say like a screwdriver. I'm just using my Phillips screwdriver to actually pop that open, pull it out, and then you can actually replace it. Now, one of the reasons why I'm not going to be doing this on this video, actually, you know what, I'll do it. Now it's the same screw as those 3 that we removed earlier. Now that ribbon cable over by the joystick will be a little bit of a pain in the butt. Just be very careful with it. And then we get that guy out, then we pop the ribbon cable. Just like that. So we got the control stick actually out. And as you can see, there's a little dust mat over here. This just basically protects any dust from actually getting inside. Now, this particular stick hasn't been giving many issues, so I'm going to treat this as a new stick entirely. So we install it in the reverse order. Of course, the stick, now if you're doing your left, you're going to want to try and be very gentle. might fight you a little bit. Personally, I like to put the screws in first. I actually just removed the R button. Just remember to hook it back when you're putting it all back together. Just as everything, otherwise you're not going to have a controller that'll work. That's back in. Now a decent set of tweezers actually goes a long way with putting these ribbon cables back. So to put the ribbon cables back, you just flip the end up and then just kind of shove it in there more or less. Now there's not really any professional way of doing this. I kind of wish there was. Like I had a secret technique or something, but you just kind of shove it until it doesn't go any further. And then you can try pulling it over with the lock. And as you can see, it doesn't move. We're good. And do the same with the control stick. I am going to remove the ZR button on this one so I can get the control stick in. The good news is about the replacement Joy-Cons is that they're always facing the right way if you're installing it. Alright, so that one's locked in. Now there is going to be a little bit of a bend on there. That's perfectly fine. Next we want to put that ZR button in there. The right one's a little bit more complex to do. But same basic idea. Mostly because the ZR button's a lot, or ZR button is a lot shorter ribbon cable on the right side. Flip that lock closed. Give it a tiny tug. We're good. Put the R button back in. And now we got the 3 screws to put back in, which is with our Phillips bit. Now keep in mind, you don't want to put this on super tight. You just want to basically go until you have to force it, which is basically about 4 or 5 turns. And lastly, before we actually put the housing back on, we want to put the battery. And the battery, you want it facing this way. This one can be a real pain in the butt sometimes to actually line up. Actual cable. But we'll get that lined up. So once again, just like taking it off, we're just going to line it up. And then you're going to push straight down. So we got the battery back in. And when you're putting the slider rail back on, you want to be careful. There's a little nudge on the very tip of it. So you can see how there's a little lip over there. It's supposed to line up. And same goes on the other side. So make sure that's nice and flush. And put our 4 exterior screws back in. Now keep in mind we're using the Y bit now. There we go. And roll back together. As you can see, the lights are working. Now we just have to plug it into the switch, make sure all the buttons are working. But you can actually test it with pushing each button and seeing the lights on the bottom to showcase that, yes, this Joy-Con is effectively working. The only thing you can't test is the control stick. Alright, so next thing, after we've successfully repaired our Joy-Con, we want to make sure it works. So right now, I just pulled out my switch to make sure that the control stick is fully working. So as you can see, the control stick is working perfectly fine. ZR button R button, up, down, left, right. And then the two buttons don't do anything inside the menu. So, without further ado, that's how you fix the Joy-Con. Now the right is a little bit more complicated as there is a few more wires. There's actually the antenna wire, which does kind of get in the way of things. But it's basically the same idea. Just try not to break anything as you're doing it. Yeah, just be very careful when you actually take them apart. The battery is one that you want to lift straight up. You don't want to pull out. You want to lift straight up. Because the way the locking mechanism actually works, it's what's called a two-way lock. So there's actually a little clamp on the top. And when you actually push down, the teeth in the battery or battery connector actually go in like so and actually hold down. When you lift up, it comes out like so. If that's a good demonstration of it. Now, as always, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned because I do plan to launch some new content under Tegco and also possibly some game reviews coming on. Now keep in mind, I will be playing a character, so just keep in mind that it's going to be a very different kind of feel.